Nice,
Hello,
great.
hello everybody. So this is Aaron Knight and Aaron Kaplan. Aaron Knight from Engineering Radiance, founder of the Migraine Freedom Program, and I have a special guest on this evening, Aaron Kaplan, who is a massage therapist and somatic experiencing
Practitioner.
practitioner.
Yeah.
Yes, here in the Seattle area. We're both in Seattle, but we are calling in from other sides of the city because we're in lockdown right now. And we're, you especially are transitioning more into this online space and seeing how you can help people manage their stress and things like that virtually through things like Zoom and everything like that. And one of the ways that he does this is through a really cool, unique technique called somatic experiencing, which he ran me through a couple of months back. And I just remember it being really interesting. And it's a perfect time to share with you guys what it is, how it works, how quickly it works. It's really remarkable. And let you guys know that this about this tool that can really help with feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, stress that a lot of us are definitely experiencing the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, if you guys have questions throughout, feel free to pop them here in the Facebook Live and I'll try to make sure we cover them. But otherwise, let's just start off, maybe explain a little bit what somatic experiencing is, because probably it's something that a lot of people haven't heard about at all. So, like, give
Yeah,
us background, what it is, and
totally. So it's been around now for I think about 30-ish years, maybe a little bit more. There's a psychologist, uh, Dr. Peter Levine, who developed it essentially he developed it as a method of resolving trauma. Um, and at this point, there's trainings all over the world where people are like going through this 3-year program to become somatic experiencing practitioners. And what I think makes it different from like other trauma healing practices is that rather than something like psychotherapy where you're, talking through like what happened and what's the meaning you're making of it and, how am I going to move on from now, like more tool-based kind of like cognitive stuff. The somatic experiencing approach actually looks at your body in the present moment and how is it responding to what's there right now. So even if something really bad happened 20 years ago, that's affecting you in some way right now. And that might be affecting you just in that you're holding a little bit more tension. And when you think about certain things, that tension increases or your body goes into a stress response or something. And so by tracking with what's happening in the present moment in your body, rather than going into the world of the mind, we can actually like find that change can happen a lot more quickly. Like we can track that the stress reactions in the body and follow them, kind of unwind them in the direction of a more safe, like a sense of well-being. Um, it's like the very broad sort of like goal is the body focus, but like tracking with the experience of whatever like stress charge is there and moving it in the direction of greater safety and greater sort of nervous system regulation.
how did you get into this coming, from being a massage therapist and this is still kind of body focus and everything like that.
Right.
How did you transition into this or learn about this?
Yeah. I've been a massage therapist for, I guess, 16 years now. And I've always been kind of a communication, like personal growth geek on the side. So, studying nonviolent communication for the past 10 years, studying neurolinguistic programming as a way to understand the mind, and like doing a lot of these things more as a hobby or for myself and my friends. Um, but at one point, a friend of mine said that, she was going to the somatic experiencing therapist. And I was like, oh, what's that? And she said, oh, it's really great. You're sitting there and you're talking about whatever. And then suddenly he will like notice that I made this gesture with my wrist. And he'll have me like do that same gesture, but really slowly. And then I'll suddenly feel all these really intense feelings coming up. And we work with that. And there's all these like huge transformations that happen. And I thought this sounded really interesting. So I actually asked her if I could meet her therapist for coffee, and she's like, "Yeah, go for it." So I met her therapist for coffee, um, and Avery Fisher is his name. He's a therapist in Seattle, um, and he walked me through how it works. And I went and started getting sessions with one of his colleagues, And it was really transformative, like 3 months of weekly sessions. And I was able to handle emotional situations like with a lot more comfort, like a lot more resilience. I was getting things done. Like I was way more productive than I ever had been, way more focused than I ever had been. And it wasn't taking extra effort. Like it wasn't like I was using willpower to get things done. It was just kind of, I would just sort of look at my week and be like, huh, I got a lot done and I feel fine, you know. And it kind of sold me. And so when I learned that the training was happening in Seattle, I was like, well, dude, yeah, I'm going to do this.
That sounds perfect. And I imagine a lot of people listening and nodding right now because that's kind of a feeling that I went through for a good week here at the beginning of all the uncertainty and stuff
Yeah.
lately, where it was hard to focus, hard to do anything
Yeah.
really. Whether or not I was conscious of the stress and anxiety behind it, I don't know, but I noticed that I was really distracted and things like
Yeah.
that. And now I've talking to more people that are kind of stuck in that
Yeah.
state. So this is something that they could do to break through it, and it's
Right.
different from counseling
Right.
or therapy or
Yeah.
anything. That is more uh, being in the moment, more
Right.
physical and things like
Yeah.
that. So, um, have you been working with a lot of people that are like right now that are kind of dealing with stress and
Yeah.
anxiety?
I mean,
Like, has this been helping?
anybody that I work with right now, of course, it's like it's there on the what's the word? On the canvas somewhere, right? And because we're not working with tons of content and we're not diving into all the deep dark secrets and stuff. We're not necessarily talking in depth about it. Although people will bring it up. Um, but but yeah, it's helpful. One of the things I think about is, you know, we're in a situation where a lot of people feel kind of confined because their usual rhythms and freedoms are not available to them.
Mm.
And one of the things, like a colleague of mine was explaining, like trauma, like the conditions for trauma is like when you feel confined, overwhelmed, and alone. Like if those things are all happening, like that's ripe for some nervous system dysregulation. So anything we can do for each other to help us feel obviously less lonely. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
connection is so huge in these times, like the phone calls and the Skype calls.
Yeah.
Um, Less overwhelmed. So able to deal with our stress more, like this, like whatever stress regulation tools you have, like somatic experiencing is a great way to like discharge stress, but also
Yeah.
people are like exercising and going for walks and meditating and like all these things that help them feel less overwhelmed. And then also less confined, like what can you do? Like where can you go? How can you get out? Even if you're not going to your usual things.
More in control too.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got a comment here, a question. I'm scared to sleep. Any suggestions? I've tried every pill known to man. Maybe you have something to comment on that. I would ask him if you could expand on that
Mm,
a little bit. Is that like something recent?
mm,
Like, what do you mean scared
mm,
to sleep? Are you scared you're gonna get a migraine? Like,
mm.
uh, talk a little bit more about that if you don't mind, unless you have some things we can
I
wait
mean, I
for.
can talk generally about being
Generally,
scared of sleep, but
yeah,
we can also, I guess I could start on that and see if they write more.
yeah.
Um, there's, in somatic experience, I'm usually tracking with what I call the waves of the nervous system. So we have waves of activation, like so sympathetic nervous system, like you go into fight or flight, and usually that's designed to like help us handle some kind of a situation, right? you know, I'm scared, so I'm going to like get scared and run away. And once I get to safety, then I'm safe and I'm going to settle back down. Um, and ideally, we go through these nice smooth waves, but those waves can get interrupted at different points. And for some people, it's hard to get scared in the first place. Like their body doesn't let them get scared, so they just kind of shut off. You know, for other people, once they get amped up, it's hard to start settling down. And one of the ways that that can look like is you can actually feel scared to settle down. So, if people start feeling calm or if they start moving towards like that happy, like unconscious state, like their body can be like, oh, you know, yeah,
Oh, how interesting. Yeah, Kim's saying anxiety. So let us know in the comments if that's resonating for you,
yeah,
if you can relate to that. It's an
yeah,
interesting way to put it.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's things that I do with people in sessions around that, just to basically help teach the nervous system how to start feeling safe with like a little bit more settling and a little bit more settling, but without like forcing it, just like dipping into like 1 ounce more calm than you usually would, and like
Mhm.
and then like letting that like be like, oh, I'm still alive. Okay. You know, uh,
Can we talk maybe with that as an example
yeah.
and just kind of demo or role play or something like that?
Hmm.
Because it was really hard for me to visualize what
Mm,
somatic experiencing was until we actually did
right.
it a little bit.
Yeah.
So maybe just a tiny bit.
Sure. Yeah. You want to do like a
Yeah,
little
just
role
like a
play
little
or
example or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. um, thinking about the best way to do that. I mean, I don't know how to give you a role. I could kind of talk through two roles if that
Yeah,
works. Or
sure,
I,
sure,
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Go back and forth and
yeah. If I had like a hat, I would wear the little.
we didn't rehearse this, guys, so I don't know
Yeah.
what role I'm playing. I don't have the script. You better do both parts.
I mean, yeah, I could walk you through an exercise, but it wouldn't be able to. It wouldn't be related to the
Sweet.
settling.
Okay.
But like so say I was just working with somebody and they were talking about something that they were really like excited and passionate about. And it felt really good to be excited and passionate. Like, yeah, I was really productive today. I did all these things. And I'm like, okay, how does it feel as you talking about all these things that you're doing? And they're like, oh, it feels really, fiery and I feel strong and blah, 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 and then I'm like, okay. And as you notice all that fiery feeling, what happens next? And they might say, oh, well, actually, yeah, now I'm starting to kind of settle and I'm feeling this like wash of heat down my arms and like kind of like tingles in my hands. And they're like, oh, yeah, that feels really good, and then they start to relax. And then they maybe are like, oh, ooh, I feel a little bit weird. Like I feel a little like unsettled. Like, um, and so then we can just kind of be with that and be like, all right, so you're a little unsettled. Like maybe your body doesn't really like relaxing that much. And again, I would just ask them, so as you're noticing that unsettle, like how's that showing up? And they say, oh, I feel like this tension in my belly. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, so what happens next with that tension? They might sit and say, mm, you know, the tension is still there. Maybe they start swaying or something like that. Like little movements come in sometimes. And I'm like, okay, so the tension's still there and you got this sway. So what happens if you just notice that sway? Is there anything pleasant about that movement? And they're like, yeah, yeah, it feels pretty good. Like that's actually really nice. And I guess the tension in my stomach is getting a little bit less, you know. And so here they're in a place where they're getting calmer again, and it's not calm in the same kind of sleepy, scary way as before. They're actually getting calmer in a place where they're still really present. Like instead of getting calm and like spaced out, they're like getting calm, but in a way that's like still like, okay, like this is actually kind of nice. And so we've gotten to practice like giving their nervous system a chance to settle down in a kind of a new way that feels more resourceful and more present than maybe what they're used to.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And that was very fast. I just gave a very accelerated, what I just did could have taken like 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, of course, to actually be in the moment and everything like that. But I hope people are getting the sense that it's very different from other modalities
Yeah.
and might open up windows to like look at patterns or things they hadn't been able to before. We've been talking about like stress and overwhelm and things like that. How would this play into like chronic pain, maybe even
Mm,
migraines or some,
mm,
people having like physical pain?
yeah. It's interesting because like you and I were talking about before the meeting, like I've started working with people on like physical stuff, like more like muscular tension, stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
more recently. Um, and there's like certainly a lot of the somatic experiencing principles, like working with micro movements and very slow movements, like you can use those to sort of start easing pain and muscular tension. So like if someone comes in with like a lot of neck pain, I can walk them through like really slow fluid movements that like essentially again like teach the nervous system how to like hold a little bit less tension in those areas. I don't know if I'd call that somatic experiencing exactly, but it's like using really similar principles. But we're talking to the neuromuscular system rather than like sort of our like neuro-emotional system.
Mm-hmm. Kind of
Um,
retraining the nurse and
yeah,
using all of your talents because you have a
because
cool
my
background
my
and
years
everything.
of massage body work.
Yeah.
But with the migraine thing, like almost everybody I've talked to about migraines, and you would know this better than I would, but they almost always say that it's stress related. Like, like I don't know if that's 100%, but it seems like a lot anyways. Um, So if your body is, I think of somatic experiencing as kind of like weightlifting for the nervous system. Like you're strengthening different parts of you. You're strengthening your ability to relax. You're strengthening your ability to handle intensity without feeling overwhelmed. And so if your body's getting more capable of handling intensity in a resourceful, like not uncomfortable way, then those like chronic tensions that might lead to migraines become less and less necessary. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
so
You're just building more resilience to
yeah,
handle all the things that come up. Sometimes stresses are out of our control, and we don't want to
yeah,
let that, build up to the point where it sets off a migraine. But you're essentially helping us learn and like train our system to be able to be
yeah.
stronger.
I
First
think I
place.
just have this image of like, think of two different athletes. Like, one is this athlete who's like, it's almost like they're just born for it. You see them like sprinting and they've got like this big smile on their face and they're so fast, but they're like, they're relaxed, except like everything that they need to run is engaged, but everything else is relaxed and they're just blissfully running. I think of Usain Bolt, like he's got like such this big smile on his face while he's running. But then like there's also people who like when they're doing their sports, you can just see them bearing down. They're like, like I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. And like they're both amazing athletes, but the one person like their body is just letting that energy flow through them. It's not getting blocked anywhere. And the other person, it's like it's stressful. It's like you can tell it's hard on their body. Like they're gonna take a while to calm down after that event is over. And so what I want to do is help people like have more capacity to be able to be with those intense moments and like really enjoy themselves and have their bodies feel really good while it's going on so that they can like go home afterwards and be like, oh, that was great. I feel like so exhilarated, you know?
I love it. This is something I think everybody needs more of right now,
Right.
especially. But and this is going to be relevant for this migraine free and warriors group for a
Yeah.
while because like how you tied it back to migraines is going to be relevant going forward as well. So if somebody is really interested in learning more,
Mm.
connecting with you, what's the best way for them to stay in touch and hear more from you?
Yeah. So I have my website for virtual work. And that's probably the best way to like learn more about this. And then
Mm-hmm.
on that website, there's a link to my newsletter where I actually will share like useful tips and um, more information about the nervous system. About once a month, I put a little newsletter out. So my website is www.somaticsessionsanywhere.com. Very straightforward.
Yes,
Even from the
awesome.
comfort of
And
your
we'll put
home.
this in the comments if you didn't
Yeah,
catch on that.
yeah.
But
So yeah,
yeah,
but do like feel free to check out my page and sign up for the newsletter. But also, if you have more questions about this, or you're curious to like have a 10-minute phone call and see if the work would apply to you or not, like I would be happy to talk to you. I'm not doing any massage, so I got plenty of free time. Like, let's have a phone call.
yeah, absolutely. Guys, you need to reach out and talk to Aaron. He's a wonderful soul and very caring and generous person. And I think you're going to love talking to him. So thank you for being my guest this evening and for sharing
Absolutely.
with us.
Yeah,
Look forward to doing more together in the future. And hope you guys listening found this helpful. If you have more questions, go ahead and put them as a comment. I'll check back later. And if you're watching the replay or whatever, we'll make sure we get those answered. So thank you guys. Have a good
cool.
evening.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Aaron.